Hey, welcome to the conversation. I'm Andy Mason, and this is authentic conversations around the messy intersection of faith, family, and business. And today I want to share with you a session from the Hearing God course. And why would I even do that? Because one of the things that's coming up right now is how do you hear the voice of God with others? Whether that's a spouse, a partner, a business partner, maybe a boss, so many different arrangements of connections that we've got with others. Maybe it's a pastor. How do I navigate that where I'm hearing something, they're hearing something? How do I work that together? Or I'm hearing something and you're not hearing something. And why is this so important? Well, this at the start of this year, Janine and I did a mini sabbatical. It was a 3-day getaway. It was so valuable. But along the way, she turns to me and says, "Hey, Andy, I just want you to know that I'm not sure if I'm looking forward to this," which is her way of saying, "Hey, please be aware that historically I have driven or dragged her into strategic planning, vision. Let's go. What are we going to do? Let's make a plan." And the realization that it was all well and good with great intent, but that's not the best way to get something out of your spouse. It's actually invitation rather than drive. And I just didn't know what I didn't know. So I've learned a couple of things over these last 25 years. And here's the good news. That was a brilliant mini sabbatical, so much so that next week we're doing our second one this year. And we've got some more planned. And now I know how to do this. The other really, really awesome thing is to be able to lead with my spouse, to be able to interact, to be able to hear her voice. So this little thing we're about to show you, this episode from the Hey God, What Now course, is actually what happens when you turn down the volume of the people around you, when you don't listen to what they are saying or what God may be saying through them to you. So I'm going to give you a little bit of what went wrong for me, how God turned that around, but also how to approach this, whether that's a spouse, a business person that you're working with, a nonprofit organization leader that you're working with. What's some of the conditions to actually go into this together so that you're actually aware of one another's voice in the process. What's the next steps for you? Make sure you listen to this and apply it to your life. Maybe you can have some apologies to take care of, but then you can actually sign up for that little course yourself. There's a link in the show notes below. And if nothing else, join us every single week. We're actually training and walking with people, the stories from all over the world of what God is doing, and these intentional training to help you grow in identity, grow in your assignment, grow in the culture that you're building in your workplace, and grow in influence. Have a great week. So much of what we do, we're not called to do alone. Whether that's your boss, whether that's your spouse, whether that's your kids, whether that's whoever else it is in your community, you're called to do this together. And so how do you do this with hearing God when you're hearing something and someone else is not? So before I dive into some specifics and a case study of what not to do, I want to just give some foundations. And firstly, these things mean everything. So number one is that whoever it is that you're working with, if you don't walk with humility, you'll find that God resists you. God resists the proud. He scorns the scorners or the mockers, but he gives grace to the humble. So check your heart. Are you walking with a humility, not elevating the status of yourself, but elevating the status of others that are listening? Second thing is, in Corinthians, it says, you can be the smartest, wisest, most right person on the planet, but if you don't have love, you're just like a noisy, clanging gong, which means that you could be hearing God, but because you're doing it in arrogance or I'm right and you're wrong, actually, one, God resists you, and number two, people don't hear you because you haven't cloaked everything you do in love. Love means to elevate the status of others. Love is what Jesus did. And finally, patience is so important. Someone may not be on the same page as you, but if you pause, if you wait, if you be patient, not in a hurry, you'll find that people will come on board. People will hear God for themselves. So walk through that. Hey, God, what do I do now? I've got the situation with a spouse, with a boss, with a pastor, with a leader, whoever that may be. Just pause. God, what do I do now? How do I navigate this situation? So those are some foundations. Here's some other things. What is most important? Now, this is going to speak into what you know about who God is. This is powerful. Jesus chose to be wronged rather than actually say, no, I'm right, you guys are wrong, for the sake of relationship. He chose to go to the cross knowing that he was perfect, he was right, he was correct. But for the sake of something greater, for the sake of love, he chose to go to the cross. What about you? What is really most important? Is it being right, or is it the relationship? Don't lose the relationship over something that really has only temporal value. Pause, wait. Perhaps there's sometimes when it's okay to be wrong, to delay, to not do what you think you want to do for the sake of relationship. You've got to trust your convictions and go with Jesus on that. Number two, confrontation. Is it okay? Here's a point. Disagreement is not the same as dishonor or disrespect. Disagreement is simply, I don't agree with you. So is it possible to be confronted? Can you be confronted? Can you have people disagree with you? Jesus shows something quite remarkable. Scroll right back to the story of Abraham. Abraham confronted God. In the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, God comes down and says, I'm going to destroy it. And Abraham says to God, what if this? What if this? Far be it from you to do that. That's called a confrontation. That's called disagreeing with the most powerful person in the entire universe. If God can be confronted, how about you? Second example, Moses disagreed with God on top of, I believe it was Mount Sinai. And God says, I'm going to destroy all these people and I'm going to take you alone, you and me. Now, that would be a great proposal, wouldn't it? Just you and me, and we can agree, you and God, and get to the promised land. And Moses says this, far be it from you, Lord, because this is your people that you led. And so I disagree with you. Don't do that. Then God says a second time, okay, but I'm not going to go with you. My angel will go with you. Second time, Moses disagrees with God. He says, nope, we're not going to leave here unless you go with us. And finally, Father God says, okay, I'll come with you. What's the point? Is if God can be confronted, how about you? If I can healthily, in a healthy way, disagree with God and say, this is not who you are. I believe that was a test. But what about you and I? Can we have people around us who disagree with us? Can we have people around us who confront us? Say, is it possible that you're not hearing this? Is it possible that there's a different way of looking at it? Is it possible that you're hearing through your bias? It's so important for us to walk in humility. Otherwise, we find God opposes us. To walk in love. Otherwise, we're just a noisy gong of pots and pans. And to walk being open to being confronted and having people disagree with us so that we see the big picture. So here's a case study. Not too long ago, I was confronted with a realization around money. So I'm the banker. I've got a banking background. I've got a business background. And I got my family into a financial mess. Now, why did I do that? Because I listened to myself rather than listening to my wife. I turned down the volume of my wife's voice over a period of time because I'm the business guy. I'm the one that's got the provision. I'm the one that's got the strategies. I'm the banker. I've got all these legitimate reasons why I could turn down her volume. But what's the point? I got us into a mess. Now, it wasn't a disaster, and it's something that we've resolved, and our relationship is stronger through it. But the point is, I turned down her volume. If I had listened to her, I would not have got into this mess, or I would have got out of it much quicker and easier and saved the damage that we had to walk through in our relationship and the damage that I caused others. So what about you? The volume of the voices around you. Are you turning them down because you can disqualify them for whatever reason that you're justifying? If you reduce the volume, you'll miss the warning. You'll miss the blessing, and you actually miss the presence of God. I'm going to explain that in a minute. If you turn down their voice, you won't hear them when you really need to. Super important, super critical, and I've messed it up, and I know plenty of people who have. That's why we're telling you, heads up right now. If you've turned down the volume of the people around you, you're setting yourself up for a mess, for a failure, for a crash. But listen to this. Matthew 18, 19, and 20. If two of you agree on earth concerning anything that they ask, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven. This is Jesus saying this. This is crazy powerful. For where two or three are gathered, which actually means not necessarily a physical place together, but actually in union or unity. Together in my name, I am there in the midst of them. What's the point? When you are in agreement, the presence of God is with you. When you're in disagreement because you've turned down someone's volume and you're excluding someone's voice, actually you are missing out on an aspect of the presence of God with you. What I know is this: where there is unity, even if I haven't got all the details right, God blesses it and He'll adjust us on the way. Compared to, you could be the most right person on the planet, but you're doing it out of disunity, you find yourself on a bumpy, lone road. So, what about you? Number one, whose voice have you turned down? Pause for a moment, reflect. People around you, situations around you, people that even God may have placed, whether that's a spouse, a boss, an advisor, a professional, a friend, and they're trying to speak into your life, but you've turned down the volume of their voice and you've justified it. What are you going to do about that? Number two, actually, why is their voice important? So don't just think, well, I'm the banker and they're not, or I know about this and they don't. It doesn't matter about that. It's actually far, far more important, because where two or three agree, there's something powerful. Is it possible that you need to pause because there's something that they're going to add to the process that's going to bring a presence of God to what you're doing that you could not have otherwise? Perhaps that's a pause that's to your favor because the delay is going to set you up to succeed more. Who knows what it is? But there is some importance and value in their voice. We have the mind of Christ. There is something about this with all of us that I'm relying on you to succeed. And number three, what are you going to do about it? What's your conviction as you've listened to this, and what are you going to do differently as a result? So I bless you with favor, with wisdom, with grace, with understanding, but with humility and love, that you see the power of unity and agreement, that together you accomplish so much more.